Life throws curveballs. It throws curveballs in leadership, in family, and in faith. The difference between those who break and those who rise isn't the challenge itself, it's how we respond. And today on Transformation Station, we're uncovering what it really takes to turn moments of pressure into opportunities for growth. Come on, let's get into it. Welcome to Transformation Station, the place where challenges meet and setbacks become setups for growth. I'm your host, Adrienne Benton, and every episode we tackle real life leadership, resilience, and purpose driven living. Now, if you've ever felt stuck in a storm, overwhelmed by the noise, or unsure how to move forward, this space is for you. Because here's the truth. Transformation isn't just possible, it's practical. And it starts with the choices that you and I make every single day. Well, today, listen, I'm super excited because we have an amazing guest. Her name is Traci. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Traci Austin is a transformational leadership strategist and the founder and chief talent officer of Elevated Talent Consulting. She is the authority on HR and leadership for trades, helping construction and skilled trades businesses build high-performing teams, develop the next generation of trade leaders, and attract and keep the best employees. Transformation Station, help me to welcome Traci. Welcome to Transformation Station podcast.
I am so excited to be here. So thank you.
Most definitely. Okay, so Traci, I want you to think about this because this is what I'm thinking about right now. As I was preparing for this, I was thinking about the last time that I, as a leader, felt knocked down by a challenge. And I was thinking about what was it that shifted for me. I want to start off by asking you this question. What do you think some leaders struggle, rather why? Why do you think some leaders struggle to inspire without resorting to control or micromanagement?
Yeah, I think they're stuck in their own story and they're stuck in this, the way it's always been, right? Because when you talk about control, the only things we can really control are our thoughts, and our thoughts impact our actions and our choices. Well, if we're stuck in a story, we're not seeing an opportunity to shift the story and thus shift what our actions are around that.
Tell us a little bit more about that. I totally thumbs up on that. I totally agree. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, for example, like we're talking about micromanagement today, right? And so if we look at micromanagement, why do we micromanage what our folks are doing? And I can answer that, or you can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we fear that we're gonna lose the outcome, or we fear that they're not going to listen to us.
Right. So that fear losing the outcome, what we're doing is we're trying to control something, which means we're not trusting our people to do their job. You notice how I just shifted our story. Because if we're not allowing our people to do their job, what we're doing is we're then becoming the problem because now we're the bottleneck. And so one of the things that I love to do is just to ask, the leaders that we work with, what are you complaining about? I love to start with this complaints because we're really, really good about complaining. So if we can really look at what are all the complaints that are out there. So I'm curious, do you have any that you've heard from clients lately that are kind of in this controlling or micromanagement area?
I think so. Some of my clients have shared that when it comes to micromanaging, they are complaining about the lack of consistency with their teams in terms of output, feeling like they have to stay on top of those that they lead in order to get things done.
Okay. So this can sound like, well, Sarah doesn't hit her deadlines, and Carlos does not always follow through exactly, and Kara just does it wrong, right? So it's going to be different for each one. And what I challenge our leaders to really look at is, we're not going to be able to solve everything all at once, but if we can look one situation at a time, now we can start to look at what those patterns are and we can address it. Once we start addressing those, we're creating accountability for ourselves and for them.
I love that. I love that. So here in Transformation Station, we always invite our listeners and our viewers to take a moment to assess. And I want to invite everybody right now, let's assess together with what Traci just shared with us, right? Ask ourselves right now, like, what is the struggle for us when it comes with micromanaging? What is that fear factor? What is it that pushes that button to where we feel compelled to micromanage, even though I think in our heart of hearts, we truly know that that's not the best way to lead, right? We fall into that temptation. So let me ask you this question. If you're talking to, as we're talking to leaders in our community right now, right, there is this question: what's the real reason people often describe their workplace as toxic? You hear that word over and over again, toxic. Why? What's the real reason that often people describe it as toxic?
So in my experience and what I see, when we relate to toxic workplaces, is it's workplaces that aren't empowering each other. We've not created an environment of trust. We've not created an environment where we have clear expectations. We've not yet created an environment where we have the follow through that's there because we've built that directly within our team. We've not created an environment of vulnerability. And here's what I mean by vulnerability. Vulnerability is where I feel safe to raise my hand and say, hey, I just screwed this up, or hey, I need help. And when the environment is this blame and shame cycle, that's toxic. When the environment shifts to, guess what? We're working as a team. We're going to collaborate as a team. We are going to own our successes and when things fall, and we're going to ping pong back and forth on what each other has done incredibly well. That starts to shift that culture. Now, this starts at the top. If your leadership team and you as that leader is not the first one to go first here, that was said really well, the first one to go first. You have to go first and show that. So if you're trashing your employees behind their back, there's zero trust. That's toxic. You have to have conversations with people, not about people.
Say that again. Say that again.
Yes. Let's start to have conversations with people instead of about people.
The erosion of trust is really huge. I have found over the years that when there is a lack of trust, you can almost anticipate that workspace is going to have problems. Problems in the mission, problems in just being able to do very simple tasks, because after a while, nobody really knows who's leading because everybody's trying to lead, or they just feel unsafe in the environment. One of the big buzzwords and phrases right now is psychological safety. And when we have an erosion of trust, that psychological safety is lacking in that environment. And so, for all of us who are listening and watching right now, this is another point of assessment, right? Are there any unhealthy power dynamics that you recognize either in your workspace or within yourself as you are leading? And if there are, this is a great time to name it and also begin to look to see how, as a team, you can begin to resolve and fix it. So this leads us to the question then, and I think I already know the answer. Is this a real thing? Can it be saved or healed? We're talking about toxic workplaces, right? Is this a real thing? Like, are there really toxic workspaces? Can a toxic workspace be saved or healed?
Yeah. So I'm going to start by answering this by starting with a definition. And
Okay.
here's what I have found is if we don't come to consensus on definitions or name it, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking probably if you have, 10,000 listeners listening in today, all 10,000 of them are going to have a slightly different definition of toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the key things we work with our leaders on is set the definition of what we're talking about and the definition of what our goal is that we're working towards.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does toxic workplace actually mean to you as an organization? Now, I'm not going to sit here and define that for you. A lot of times I'll pull up Webster and I'll pull up those things, but within that, let's define toxic, okay? And then I'll give you some examples of toxic, and that is where we are, talking about people. We're kind of doing the trash talk behind their back. We're not setting clear expectations for what folks are meant to be doing, but yet when they don't hit an expectation, we're telling them they're doing a really bad job. Like those are some examples of toxic workplaces. So define it. And once you've defined what toxic is, we also want to define what we're looking for in the organization, right? We're looking for a culture of accountability. Accountability looks like this, and this is how we measure it. And I typically will go to the things I actually want to achieve and
Mm-hmm.
say, how are we doing to get there within it so that we've defined those?
Mercy. This is really good. So what have you seen via your clients as you go through this process with them?
Typically what we see is just these light bulbs of like, oh, I now know what winning looks like. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you mean now I have a metric. Once I know what I'm supposed to do, I can do it. And
Yes.
so we work through defining those metrics and then hitting them. We do a lot of workshops on goal setting. So really saying, all right, what is the goal? And then we're going to cascade those goals through the organization. What is the goal overall? What's the goal for the executive team? What's the goal for the senior leadership team? So each team has their goals. But guess what? For me as a contributor, my goal has to line in with my team's goal.
Okay.
So then we've got the cascading up and down. Now what we're doing is we're tying in the work we're actually doing into a couple of key areas. One is the mission. I hope you've got core values. If you're, you may have some nonprofits on, some government, some private, but we want to ensure that we're really keying into the mission of the organization and or the core values. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why does our business exist from an impact statement? So our goals should line into that. And then we also want our goals to very specifically line in, of course, there's always going to be a revenue goal. And of course, they need to line into our job description. So I've got those 3 tenets there.
And can you say those 3 one more time?
Yep. So you've got your mission. Yep. You've got your overall organizational. There's always going to be some profitability goal that it hits one way or another. And then, what's the specific thing within the job description that should personally excite you? Because if it doesn't, that person is more than likely in the wrong role. So that's going to be a job fit issue.
I agree 1000%. So then what are the signs that a leader is unintentionally micromanaging, even if they believe they're being hands-on? This is a really important question. What are the signs that we can recognize that a leader is unintentionally micromanaging, even if they believe they're being hands-on?
So the signs that a leader is micromanaging is when they have all the answers. One of the books that I absolutely love is Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette. I love that one because it's really this, and if your listeners don't have that one, pick it up. It's a quick read. There's a workbook that goes along with it. It's phenomenal. But the key here is if you have all of the answers, you're being a stoplight for your employees versus creating a roundabout. There's another book there. We want to ensure that we are creating the environment that our team members know exactly what the expectations, the goal is, but we're also giving them the opportunities to get there. So here's an example of what that can look like. That can be, Adrienne, how do I do XYZ? If you give me the answer, you're more likely going to micromanage. Or if you tell me, Traci, I need you to check in with me every single day at 3 p.m. Okay, well, why? Well, I just want to make sure you don't need anything. Well, how about, so it's like if your hands are in all of the pies and you've got 10 little cherries on all your little fingers, you're micromanaging.
1000%. 1000%. I literally know of a situation like that right now. And the team does not feel valued. They actually feel resentful right now, but it takes the leader being willing to stop and authentically assess and ask themselves what is true about this scenario right now with no judgment, right? And being able to recognize, give themselves the opportunity to recognize that they are indeed micromanaging, that over involvement in small decisions, like that is a sure sign right there. I've often seen as well, work being redone after delegation, right? So you assign a task and then you redo it because it was not completed your way.
Right.
That's a sure signal to the team that you don't trust them or you don't trust their judgment. And I have also seen team members get frustrated, like, well, why should I even try if you're going to go ahead after I try and redo it anyway, Any other ones you've seen?
Well, I want to play off of this one for a minute because I think it's really important. And one of the questions I love to ask leaders that go back and redo work is 2 questions. The first one is, what value did it actually give the client for you to redo the work? How much, if we look at a scale of 1 to 100, where did that employee come in at? If they came in at 85% and what you did brought it to 95%, was that enough to actually move the needle with the client? If that answers no, then I want you to go look in the mirror. If that answers yes, then I have some more questions for you, right? So if it would have impacted the client and it was a big of enough difference, why did you just go redo it versus pull the employee in and have a coaching conversation? And here's what this can sound like. Adrienne, thank you so much for this project that you worked on. And I know that this was the very first time that you did this. How do you think it went? What were those things that went incredibly well? What were those things that you think was potentially missed? And do you have any additional questions, or was there any missing information on this project? And now what we've done is we've opened up a dialogue. What I like to do then is typically they're going to name for me what they believe they missed. And I'm going to say, yes, you're absolutely right. So we've not yet sent this into the client. Can we do a 1-hour working meeting? And here's the expectation of where we want to get to. So the next time this project comes, which it will, we can count on you to do it 100%. What are your thoughts on that? And so what we're doing is we're starting to create a conversation that's built in trust versus you did it wrong, sorry, or I just redid it for you. So we're shifting this around so that we can truly collaborate, and we're setting the expectations of what winning looks like.
I like that. Setting the expectation for what winning looks like. And it's important for people to know what that looks like, because then they have a target, they have a goal that they can work towards. They have a vision, they have a dream that they can move towards, which is really amazing. I'm thinking about this reflection principle. So for our viewers and our listeners, let's focus on this for a moment. Hands-on leadership builds confidence. Micromanagement builds dependence. Leaders, what do you want? Confidence in your team or dependence upon you? Traci, I had a mentor one time who said to me, How you know you're leading well is when your team is able to still keep things moving forward when you're not there. Oh, I love that. I love that. That's our goal, to mentor, to coach, so they can do the work that needs to be done without us being there. So Traci, you've talked about the 4 levers of employee engagement. Talk to us about that. What are the 4 levers?
Absolutely. So the 4 levers of employee engagement are: one is fit to role. So that's specifically looking at, is this person in the right job for them? And this is looking at their natural behavioral strengths. So for example, if you are a very, very detail oriented person, you probably want to be in a role that's very detail oriented, accounting, payroll, those kind of things, right? So that fit to role. The second lever of engagement is going to be the team that you're working with. Are you on a team where we're turning up the strengths of each other? Or are you on a team where we are playing whack-a-mole on the weaknesses? I don't know about you, but I want to be on the team where we're turning up strengths. And what that also means is we're aligning the members of the team and their individual strengths to the strategy that that team is executing. So number 2 is team. The third lever of engagement is leadership. Is your leader leading you the way you need to be led? So let me give you an example of that. And this goes back to the natural behaviors of individuals, right? So I have an amazing executive assistant, and she is someone that's very process oriented and very detail oriented. Thank goodness, because I am not, right? But what I need to be very careful with for that is when I'm leading her, I know that she does things based on an order. So she'll do the first thing that came in, then the second thing, then the third thing, then the fourth. So if I need to shift those priorities, what I need to do then is, say, hey, Hayes, here's the priorities that we need to shift, so that she knows that. The other piece of this is I'm someone who will be like, hey, can you do this? 5 minutes later, hey, can you do this? 5 minutes later, hey, can you do this? Okay. Every time I interrupt her, it's going to take her 20 minutes to an hour to get back and focus. So I need to lead her by, we will meet in the morning for 5 minutes and prioritize. So I'm leading her the way she needs to be led. So I want to make sure there's examples within that. So we have fit to role, we have team, we have leadership. Then the fourth is culture. And this is looking at mission, vision, core values of the organization. Is the culture of an organization aligned to my individual core values? If those two things are not aligned, more than likely, we are not going to work very well together, right? So that culture can look like, the organization may be an organization that is all in person and we work 60 hours a week. That's an easy example, right? If I'm someone who's very family oriented, I need and both with, let's say, aging parents and young kids and all these things. And that something, my values at the time, family's a higher value than, this very kind of strict boxed approach. That is going to be a mismatch, right? So those are our 4 levers of engagement. I'm going to give you a bonus lever. Okay. Now, this is one from my HR hat on. We're not making hiring decisions on, but it's something that's really important that we have a conversation around. And that is called seasons of life. And here's what I mean by that is that there's going to be times where individuals are going to be in this career ladder. I'm going to climb a career ladder right now. I'm 100% focused on my career. Then there's times where there is, a parent is ill or passed away, or where, we're raising young children. Guess what? Career takes a backseat or a different level of engagement for that individual at that time. So it's really important we're having those conversations. And it's also important, remember how I talked about definition earlier, that we're defining the expectations of the role, in my opinion, in terms of outcomes. Here's the outcome this role needs to produce versus hours of a butt in a seat. So do we need that in order to hit an outcome? Of course. Yet when we can really have those conversations, because there's going to be times mentally I cannot give you 110%. I just need to do what I know and focus on that thing. And there's others where I'm like, give me the new thing. Let me figure it out. Let me do all those things. But what's happening at home has a big impact about what's happening at work as well.
Yes. So, spinning off of that, right? So what does inspirational leadership look like in practice, especially if we're stepping back and we're saying, I don't need to be in control of every detail. I don't have to micromanage. Then how do I still inspire? Like, what does inspirational leadership look like in practice?
Yes, I love this question. So what this looks like in practice is we give the vision of the outcomes, right? So I'm going to do a definition here. An output is, we're recording a podcast right now. That's an output. The outcome that we're aiming for is that we will have 10,000 listeners download this, and we're going to get, 9,555 5-star reviews. Okay. So, output, recorded a podcast. Outcome, downloads and 5-star reviews. They're very, very, very different things.
Yes.
Right? So inspirational leadership needs to ensure that our folks know what the outcomes are and that we've enrolled them in it. And so that may look like, here's the outcome. What do you believe that's reasonable? Like that reasonable question is really important. Do we both believe that this is something that we can hit? Yes. Okay, great. So what support do you need for me to get there? Now, there's different life cycles of an employee. If they're brand new and we're in a huge training period, we're going to be much more micromanaging than we will be on the other side, right? The other side of this is we need to really know who the person is. Now, if we've got folks that are very process-oriented, detail-oriented, and work collaboratively through a team, micromanagement to them is going to look very different than micromanagement to somebody that has a very high independent leadership. That's, somebody that is very kind of persuasive, and a risk taker. It's going to look very different to those two different people. So we need to take into account who the person is, where they are in their life cycle, and ensuring that they know what winning looks like and that we've enrolled them in that outcome.
I love this. My listeners and my viewers right now, Traci has given us so many rich leadership gems. I invite you to put in a comment, put in the chat, send us a DM, like what is resonating with you? And also, what commitments are you going to make moving forward after listening to this podcast as you consider your leadership and and the decision you're making to not micromanage? Traci, as we turn the corner here, I want to ask you this question. A bucket list, right? We've heard that term, but what is a personal bucket list item? What is a professional bucket list item? How do the two interplay?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. Okay, so I'll give you an example of one that's coming up October 31st.
Okay.
So I've had on my bucket list to go to Italy. I've never been to Italy, so I'm going to Calabria. And so with that, and I know you're in Italy, so
yes.
So with that being said, also on my bucket list was to start more collaborations with other business owners. And so a friend of mine is running a food and wellness retreat for female entrepreneurs in Calabria,
Nice.
the Italian Culinary Institute. And so I'm doing some pieces on teamwork, and she is leading this week-long retreat in Calabria at the Italian Culinary Institute. So that's an example of personal and professional. And I ask this question really to just about every employee during our climate surveys. And if you're doing one-on-ones as a leader, ask that question. And here's why. I'll give you an example from a client. We asked this question of one of their employees, and what she stated was she was in accounting. And she's like, I really want to get much more into event management. And I said, okay, so this was a company that it was an association. So she wanted to get much more into event management. I said, okay, cool. What areas of it? She's like, I want to see how the interactions, the day of, the registration, the upsells, how all of that impacts our finances. She's like, I feel like I'm missing a piece. I really want to get the exposure to that. I said, cool. I said, what's a personal bucket list? She's like, well, I want to go to the San Diego area with my family. Said, you realize that, the national conference next year is in San Diego. She's like, no, I don't. I was like, okay. So they did make that happen for her. And guess what? That increased the engagement of that team member. We found a skill set that was more aligned for her, and so this is where we really start playing and saying, where are those strengths and interests that also serve the organization?
So is this kind of similar to talent management?
It's a way of it for sure. When we look at talent management as engaging our team members, like this is a really fun way of doing it without it feeling like, well, what do you want to do with your life? Well, I don't know. Well, what do you want to do with your career? Well, I don't know. Like this one's fun.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Okay. So what strategies then can leaders use to build trust and accountability without taking over or hovering?
Yeah. Curious questions. I know that's like, wait, what? What's a curious question? These questions you just asked. What's a personal bucket list item? What's a professional bucket list item, right? But curious questions are also things like an employee comes up and asks you for permission on something. Ask them, well, what do you think you should do with it? Well, if you knew what that answer was, what do you believe it would be? What you're doing is you're building their confidence in themselves. And quite honestly, you're building your confidence in them.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear frequently is that many times people feel as though they don't have a voice in the workplace. And so I'm thinking, as you mentioned, use curious questions. It gives that person an opportunity to have a voice.
Yeah.
To be able to say what's important to them and to feel valued. I also would propose to, our leaders out there, set clear expectations. When we want to build trust and accountability, people have to know, like, define the what and the why, right? The team can figure out the how. But if I know what the what is and I know what the why is, man, I have clear expectations, then it starts to build a trust factor, right? And we can hold each other accountable because we know what the what and the why is. I also would propose that we agree on checkpoints, not constant check-ins. I don't know about you, but I do not function very well with somebody who's constantly over my shoulder. Did you get it done? Did you get it done? Did you get it done? Where are you on the task? Like, give me some space and some room to get it done. And then we'll check in. I'll check in and let you know what my progress is, rather than you coming and having to do it all the time. Traci, this has been so valuable and so rich, and you have dropped some serious gems. I personally want to go back and watch the replay. I have to write some things down in my notes. And you gave us a lot of food for thought, honestly, on how we can lead authentically without micromanaging. For the viewers and the listeners who want to reach out to you, who want to engage in your resources, your coaching, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. You'll find me on LinkedIn. So you can definitely find me there. All of our information's on our website, which is elevatedtalentconsulting.com. And I know you've got our Tough Talk Blueprint, which really goes through, this belief that every complaint is just a poorly worded request. So how to figure out what the complaint is actually asking for, then to walk through a conversation with that person.
I love it. I love it. So to our listeners and viewers, Traci's on LinkedIn. Find her there. You see the link here. It'll also be in the description, so you can go ahead and tap on it. We want to invite you to engage with her. Check out the resources. Also, let her know that you saw or you heard this particular episode. Ask her some questions and also let her know what resonated with you. Traci, thank you so much. It has been an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, there you have it. Another rich episode. And listen, as we close here, I want you to remember that transformation doesn't come from avoiding difficulty. It comes from how you and I show up in the middle of it. And here's your transformation challenge this week. Take one challenge you're facing right now, write down the lesson that it might be teaching you, and share it with someone you trust. Don't keep your growth to yourself. I'd love to hear from you. So drop a comment, send me a message, or use our hashtag Transformation Station Podcast to show how you're turning your challenges into change. So until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and keep turning life's challenges into stepping stones.